Is the tea that you're drinking slowly killing you? Stay tuned to find out. Welcome to Nature's Path to Wellness. My name is Wendy, and today we're going to be talking about teas, some that might be toxic and some that might be safe for you. So, according to a recent study done by McGill University, after brewing a single cup of tea, they found from a single tea bag that in that cup there was 11.6 billion microplastic particles and 3.1 billion nanoplastic particles in that single cup from that single tea bag. That's pretty scary. And in fact, it's 1,000 times higher than that found from other types of foods that might leach different types of toxic chemicals into your food. So maybe, or water, if you're thinking about water bottles and that type of thing. So some of the tea bags that you get are made in, or they're not like the tea bag is made of a polypropylene, and it's a plastic. And not only is it terrible for your body, it's also terrible for the environment. If we're to look at it that way, it's not recyclable, and I would hate to keep putting these into the garbage. This is actually from a really good tea company. Well, I would say good tea, the tea leaves and whatnot. It's David's tea, and it's a peach tea, which I happen to really like. But when I opened the package and realized I tried it at a friend's and it was good, and when I bought the package and then brought it home, I realized that the tea bags are actually plastic. So it's pretty gross to be making my tea with this plastic bag sitting in hot boiling water and leaching whatever chemicals into my tea. Also, some use a resin in the tea bag itself in order to seal the tea shut. So you're probably familiar with this type of tea bag. It's like one of the pillow, they call it, tea bags. And in order to seal the tea bag shut, they use something called epichlorohydrin. And epichlorohydrin is very similar to epoxy. I don't know if you've ever used epoxy before. I've used epoxy, I believe, probably on one occasion. And the process involved having two types of syringes with the chemicals in each syringe, and you depress the syringe into whatever container you're going to use, and you mix it up, and then the epoxy becomes usable for sealing something. My recollection from using that epoxy was that the smell was so incredibly toxic. And here they're using this epichlorohydrin, again, a very similar product to epoxy. It's also that epichlorohydrin is a group 2A known carcinogen, and that's what they use to seal the tea bag, and then you're steeping that in the hot water and into your tea. So the epichlorohydrin can also be found in sausage casings, coffee filters, and even what's worse is in some water filters. So here you are trying to purchase a water filter to filter out the water that comes maybe from the city in your tap. I'm fortunate to have well water, but the people that are using these water filters, there's also epichlorohydrin used in many of those. One of the companies that uses epichlorohydrin, and it's a known fact, is Lipton tea. So if we're going to try and find a tea bag that doesn't have epichlorohydrin, it's going to be pretty difficult. This one here, you might say, well, it's not using epichlorohydrin because there's nothing to seal, and they've just sort of stapled or sewn. It's almost like they've stitched the bag up. It's hard to explain, but they also have attached this string to the bag so that it can be steeped in the tea and you can pull it out. They've used a similar type of product to bind the string to the bag. This one here, they've used the epichlorohydrin to seal the bag shut. And this one here is one of the ones that you're probably familiar with. It's a nice little pouch, but you can see that there is a seam that they've probably used the epichlorohydrin to seal the bag shut. And then it's stapled at the top. So the staple at the top, someone might think, well, that's pretty inconsequential. There's nothing wrong with the staple, but it's an aluminum staple. So now you've got a tea bag that has questionable tea in it, maybe. We're going to get to a different part about the tea soon. It comes in a pouch that is probably very likely bleached, and it has epichlorohydrin to seal the tea bag, and then an aluminum staple. And the aluminum staples sometimes are also covered with a BPA type plastic. So that is just adding another bonus to your tea. So if you're looking for a quality tea, and you may find that some are putting their tea inside a paper type bag, and I don't have one in particular to show you here, but it may come from like a wood fiber or a cotton fiber type bag. But the problem is, unless you find one that's like got a real sort of brown color to it, most of them are bleached. And they make it like that so that the consumer, it's pleasing to the eye to look at it. It's more pleasing, I think, for most people, or at least the people that are producing these figure that it's more pleasing for people to look at this nice white bag to put in their tea than something that's brown in color. So what's interesting to note is that tea manufacturers are not required to mention on the box or the bag, whatever the container is that the tea comes in, that they are using the polypropylene bag or the epichlorohydrin or the aluminum staples on the tea bags, because quite frankly, according to what the FDA requires of them, it's not a product that we're consuming. We're not sitting and eating the tea bag, right? So it's not required to be on the box or the container. The consumable is the tea or the tea leaves, because it's producing the tea when we put the hot water in and we drink it. It's obviously not a consideration that we're also consuming the epichlorohydrin, the bleach from the bleached tea bag, the aluminum from the aluminum staple, and the polypropylene if it's a plastic type tea bag. So that's pretty scary to note. If you're to do the best thing possible, I would suggest that you opt for a loose type tea. So these are tea leaves. We happen to pick these up from a local farmer's market. It's a local company that's producing these, and it's just tea leaves. And what you would do is you can place them into one of those stainless steel type round tea balls, and they just steep into the water. I don't actually have one here handy to show you, but what I will do is use this type of a basket, and this goes into the teapot that I have, and then you just pour the boiling water over top and then steep your tea. And when you go to pour it out, the tea leaves obviously just stay in the basket. So that is a safer option. And in fact, it was something that was a good option because I do have a selection of teas that I enjoy, namely this one here, which has got a lot of nice peach chunks in it and whatever, and different types of things and seasonings mixed in with the tea. But again, I don't want the plastic in my tea. So I can actually just open the tea bag up and place it in the little basket, and then produce the tea from there, or steep the tea from there. I guess the concern is, if we want to take it a step further, the product, the tea leaves and whatnot, has been sitting in the plastic. So how much of that plastic could be rubbing off into the tea? I don't know if we want to go that far, but it is another consideration. So if you can buy a loose leaf tea, a lot of the good health food stores will sell them, and you can just take these tea leaves. This is in a nice brown paper bag type of thing, and then it's almost like a wax paper that they've used on the front, and then just again put it in the basket and steep it that way. So the next thing I want to get into is pesticides. So not only are we kind of being attacked from the aspect of the plastics and the different things that our tea is encapsulated in, now we got to talk about the tea that's inside the bag. So there's been a lot of studies done. In fact, there was a recent study done by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, and they found that they tested 10 teas, and that about 8 out of 10 of those teas came back with multiple chemicals and residues from 22 different types of pesticides. So one has to ask themselves, how healthy is it drinking tea? I mean, people can say, oh, tea is healthier than coffee and whatnot, but if the tea quality is not great, and if the package that the tea is coming in is not great, how much better is it for you? So some of these teas that they tested were Lipton, Red Rose, Tetley, Twinnings, No Name, Signal, King Cole, Uncle Lee's Legends of China, and Celestial Seasonings. And there was another one which isn't mentioned in the study, but there was 10 in total, and 8 out of 10 of them, again, contained multiple chemicals and up to 22 different types of pesticides. That's really scary. One of the pesticides that's quite common is known as endosulfan. And endosulfan is similar to DDT. And you might remember hearing about DDT way back in the day. It's actually been banned for about 48 years from North America and the European Union and various other places. But a lot of the teas that we get come from China. And so they're not necessarily under the same regulations that we are in terms of growing tea. They have different rules and laws and regulations. And even if they're not still actively using endosulfan at that particular tea growing spot, the endosulfan is it's in the ground, it's still there, and it takes a long time, like a number of years, to come out of the ground and not be affecting what they're growing anymore. So there is that to consider. The only, going back to the test that I mentioned earlier, the only tea, interestingly enough, that came out of the test without having, it was pesticide free is what it was found, was red rose. So there's one that was, interestingly, the tea itself is safe. Again, you'll have to watch for the packaging that the tea comes in. So some of the teas that are safe, in my research on this, is traditional medicinals, stash, and earth Momma. And what I'll do is I will try to include some more teas that I am able to come up with that in the description that are safe to drink. And you want to do your own research. I recently purchased this box of tea here. It is Uncle Lee's tea. And the reason that I purchased this one in particular is because it is stating on the box that it's organic, and that it's, it's got the little organic seal on it. But it happens to be one of those in the studies, in the 8 out of 10 study, that came back with the residues of the pesticides. So that's really sad. So even if I were to take it out of the packaging that it comes in, which is, this is the tea bag, there's a little envelope that it comes in. Even if I were to take it out of that package and put it into my steeper and make it, the tea itself, the tea leaves are, there's pesticides likely in them, even with the organic seal on it. So that's concerning. So I will update the description and I will add whatever I find, and I will update it as I go along and do more research on it. So I thank you for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you again next time.